Hello everyone, good evening. I hope you all can see me. Am I audible and visible? Okay, so in our last class, we were discussing about mistakes, right? So we have already finished mistake regarding Indian law and foreign law, right? And we also started a unilateral mistake and bilateral mistakes as well. But there were some issues in connection. That is why we had to stop our class. So today I'll be discussing bilateral mistake from starting again, so that if somebody missed that class, they'll also cope up. Okay. So we'll start the topic bilateral mistake. It's on page number 46. Page number 46, I repeat. Topic number 2, bilateral mistake. We are discussing that today. Okay. So we already discussed that if your consent is not free, then your contract is not valid. The nature of your contract depends on the circumstances. Like we discussed that your consent is not free when it is obtained by 5 things. And that 5 things was first, undue influence, coercion, fraud, misrepresentation, and mistake. The above 4 we have already discussed in our last classes. And if your consent is obtained by these 4 items, then your contract will be voidable. Voidable at the option of aggrieved party. The last topic we were discussing was mistake, right? Mistake is erroneous belief. When you don't know the truth and you try to give that to other person, that is mistake. Okay, mistake is erroneous belief. In one word, if we sum up the definition of mistake, it says that mistake is erroneous belief. So mistakes are also of lots of type we have discussed already. Today we'll be discussing bilateral mistake. Bilateral mistake means when both the parties under a same mistake. When both the parties are under a similar mistake, that is bilateral mistake. Bilateral mistake can be of many types. Bilateral mistake can be of many types. It is given in your books. We are studying from there only. Okay. So first kind of bilateral mistake can be mistake about the title of subject matter. Mistake could be regarding title of subject matter. Like sometimes you do not know the fact that you are the owner of something. Okay. And you accidentally enter into some other kind of contract. Like for example, if I want to sell this house. Okay. So coincidentally already my this house belonged to me only because my great grandfather transferred it to grandfather, so it was like that. So I did not knew that this house belongs to us only, and I entered into a contract with another person and he sold me this house. Now the title of this house, the ownership of this house was already belonging to me only. So here both the parties are under a common mistake. Both the parties are under a common mistake. That is, they themselves don't know that who is holding the title of this property. So here both the parties are under a bilateral mistake. Both the parties are conducting similar mistake, and that too regarding the title of the goods. So this is the first kind of bilateral mistake, which is regarding the title of the goods. That is, who is actually the owner of the goods, who is actually the owner in the contract. We have a confusion regarding that. We are the owner and we ourselves doesn't know that we are the owner. Okay, so this is first kind of bilateral mistake. Second, it may be mistake as to identity and quality of subject matter. Now, these are two concepts. One is regarding identity of subject matter and another is regarding the quality of subject matter. So regarding identity, sometimes what happens, there is some confusion. Like I told Mr. XYZ that go and pick up something from some shop. Okay. Now, and I called that shop owner and I told them that Mr. XYZ is coming, so give my products to Mr. XYZ. Meanwhile, some other person went there and coincidentally he was taking that goods only that I ordered. Okay, and coincidentally his name was also Mr. XYZ. So here we got confused. I thought that is Mr. XYZ which I sent, and that shop owner also thought that that is that Mr. XYZ only, but actually this Mr. XYZ was somebody else. So here both the parties under a common mistake and regarding what? Regarding the identity of the person. That is, actually we gave the product to the wrong person, and we ourselves does not know that that was wrong person. Okay, so this is also a bilateral mistake. Second type of it is related to quality. Now I was supposed to get X quality, and by mistake the other party gave me Y quality, and I believe that that is X quality only. So here also both the parties are doing some common mistake, and that is regarding the quality of the goods. So now if you are doing mistake, if you are under such mistakes, then your contract becomes completely void. Your contract becomes void, either of the mistake, any kind of bilateral mistake you are committing, in all the circumstances the nature of your contract will be void. That is, these contracts are not enforceable in the court of law. You cannot go to the court and file a case against that person who has committed this mistake. Why? Because both the parties are under a similar mistake. Then we don't know who to blame, right? So in these situations, your contract is completely void and you cannot take any actions against the other parties. Yeah, if there are some damages, if you have faced some losses, then in that case you might recover those losses by mutual consent, but the contract cannot be taken into the court of law. You cannot file any case against those person. Next type of bilateral mistake is mistake as to quantity of subject matter. Sometimes what happens now, we send the wrong quantity to the other person. The quantity that person demanded, we have some confusion in listening. For example, I called the shop owner and I told him, please send 100 kg rice, and despite of 100, that due to network problem, that shop owner heard 102 kgs and he sent 102 kgs. Now I thought that this is 100 kg only. I did not weigh that again. So here also we are committing same mistake, and that too regarding the quantity of the product. So this is also a bilateral mistake, and in this situation also your contract will be completely void. Next type of bilateral mistake is mistake regarding price of subject matter. Sometimes we get confused regarding the price. Okay, sometimes there is sometimes there is some confusion regarding the price of the subject matter. For example, I was supposed I WhatsApp the owner to send me something, and he told me the price of goods is rupees 50. He was supposed to tell me that the product's price is rupees 1500 per product or rupees 1100 per product. But accidentally he did not write, he omitted 10. That is, now the product price is 110. So here there is mistake regarding price of the product. So sometimes this mistake can also occur. It is human nature. Human error can always occur. So here also your contract is void. So these are certain mistakes that both the parties made, and both the parties commonly made. Okay. I told you when I started the class itself that I am on page number 46. I was on page number 46. Now we are starting another topic which is on page number 47. Okay. So open your modules and open page number 47. We'll be starting consideration now. Okay, so this is all we discussed, that free. This was all about free consent. So to sum up this chapter, this was when your consent is not free, when you are not giving your acceptance freely, when your acceptance is influenced by something or somebody, that is at that time your contract is not valid. Okay, so your consent is if it is influenced by 5 things, that is undue influence, coercion, misrepresentation, mistake, and fraud. If you have given your consent by these 5 influences, then your contract is not valid. Okay, so this is all we did in this chapter. Now we are starting another new chapter, and the name of that chapter is consideration. Consideration, again, it is a very important chapter when we were discussing about the rules regarding the contract. Okay. Rules regarding the valid contract, there we studied that there must be consideration in a contract. Okay, so the definition of consideration was given in section 2 subsection D. I told you, remember, like this, C for consideration, so it is after C it comes D, C, D. Okay, so the definition of consideration is given in Section 2, subsection D. While we were discussing section 2, I skipped this definition there. Why? Because I just told you the common meaning of consideration, but I did not explain the definition at that time because I told you we'll be discussing this chapter in very detail, right? So in short, if I tell you what is consideration, then consideration is whatever you are getting in return. If I am giving you my book, in return, the money you are giving me against this book, that is consideration for me. Money you are giving, against money you are receiving the book. So book is consideration for you. So whatever in layman language, if we define consideration, then it is something in return. Whatever you are getting in return is considered as consideration. The definition, section 2, subsection D, will be discussing this definition now. Before discussing this definition, we'll read some legal rules regarding consideration. Why am I doing this? Because the first 3 rules of consideration itself constructs the definition of consideration. That is, the definition of consideration contains the characteristics of consideration. Okay, so firstly, we'll discuss the legal rules regarding consideration, page number 48. Do you have any doubt till here, or shall I start the new topic? Just yes or no. Okay, let's start consideration. We are studying legal rules regarding consideration. The first rule regarding, like we studied the rules regarding offer, we studied rules regarding acceptance, we studied legal rules regarding contract. Similarly, we'll be studying legal rules regarding consideration. The first rule of consideration says that it must always move at the desire of promisor. Make one thing very clear, the consideration always is decided by the promisor. Promisor is the person who is giving you the offer, who is making the promise. Okay, that we already discussed. So it will always be at the discretion of promisor. It is always promisor's right to decide the consideration. If I am selling you my book, then the price of the book will be determined by me only. You do not have the right to determine the price. Yes, you can give your suggestions. Accepting your suggestion or rejecting your suggestion, that will be completely up to me. So it is clearly said that consideration will always move at the desire of the promisor. Now I am hired to teach you law. Okay, so I am hired to teach you law. Now if I start using, the institute want me to teach me law. The CAT Institute wants me to teach law here. But without their permission, if I start teaching other subjects also, remember, without their permission, if I start teaching other subjects here, then they are not bound to give me salary for the other subjects I taught you. So it should be very clear from this that when you are making a contract, just make sure the right to, excuse me, is good. Okay, so always remember that consideration will always move at the desire of the promisor. Whatever the promisor wants, we are supposed to give that only. We cannot do our own discretion. Okay, so the the consideration will be always with from the promisor only. Will be decided by the promisor only. If you have any queries, then ask there and then that no, I'm not okay with this price. Just change the price. You can make a counter offer there. But once you accept the offer, then you cannot change the consideration because consideration will always move at the desire of promisor. Next point is it may move from the promisee or any other person. Now the right to decide the consideration is always of the promisor. But in return, the promisee can give us the consideration. But in case if you are not getting any consideration from the promisee and you are getting consideration from any other person, but that is on from the behalf of promisee, then also it is valid. Let's take an example, then we'll discuss this point. There was an old lady. Okay, so old lady transferred her house to her daughter. Okay, this old lady told this daughter that I am transferring this house to you, but there is one condition. That is, you'll have to provide annuity to my sister. Now, what happens here? Annuity is the annual charges that you give to somebody. It could be household expenses or anything. Okay, so here this old lady transferred her house to this daughter. And there was one condition that I will transfer this house only if you provide annuity to your Masi, that is to your to my sister. So here what happens? Now for some time, this daughter gave annuity to her auntie, but after some time she refused to give this. So this auntie filed a case against the daughter, stating that she was supposed to give me annuity. She gave me annuity for a certain period, but now she stopped. So what this daughter took as an excuse that the rule of contract states that there must be consideration from both the parties, right? So I am giving her annuity, but in return of annuity, she's not giving me anything. She's not giving me anything in return. So technically there is a void contract here because law clearly states that if there is no consideration, then there is no contract. So technically, I'm not receiving anything from this old lady, so I'm not supposed to give any annuity to this Masi. So what happens here? The court states that it is true that you are not receiving anything in return from your auntie, but whatever you are giving to your auntie, you have already received the consideration from the old lady, right? You have already received. You have not received consideration from the promisee, but you have received consideration from some other person on behalf of promisee, right? Because the clear statement of the old lady was that, okay, I'll transfer this house only if you provide annual charges to my sister. So this is clear from this fact that here the annual charges, the daughter is bound to pay these annual charges. Reason behind this is clear. That is, although she is not receiving any consideration from the promisee. Here the promisor is daughter and promisee is the auntie. So this daughter, she is not receiving anything from this promisee, that is from her auntie, but she has already received consideration from some other person, that was her mother. So here it is clearly stated that consideration can come from either the promisee, either promisee directly gives you something in return, or if somebody else is giving something to you on their behalf, that is also fine. That will also be considered as consideration only. So this was a famous case law here, and the name of the case law was Chinnaiya versus Ramaiah. The name of the case law was Chinnaiya versus Ramaiah. Okay, so this is the rule. The rule clearly, dekho, the consideration will be always decided by the promisor only, but in return the consideration can come from either promisee or the other person, that is from promisee's behalf. If somebody else is also giving you something, that is also valid consideration. Next is consideration may be present, past or future. Consideration may be past, present, or future. Now, what is this past, present, future? If you read the book, then it will create some confusion. Reason behind the language is quite typical. One thing that you have to keep in mind, if you want to identify that your consideration is past, present, or future, you'll have to concentrate on performance. That is, when is performance happening? Like, for example, if you have already done something, but in return of that, you are getting something now. You have already done something in past, but for that past performance, you are receiving consideration in future or today in present, then it is known as past consideration. If you will concentrate on consideration, then you will get confused. Why? Because here we are getting consideration either in present or in future. So if you go to the consideration wala part, then you will get confused and you will take the answer it is present consideration or future consideration. No, when you have to identify, this is a very common question in your examination, that they'll clearly give you a situation and they'll ask you that what kind of consideration this is. Is it past consideration? Is it present? Or is it future? So you have to be very precise. You'll have to read it very precisely, because there are higher chances of committing mistake here. Okay, so the thing on which you have to concentrate is performance. That is, when is the performance happening? Now, for example, I'm teaching you here. After teaching each and every chapter, after that, I receive salary from the institute. Here, I am receiving consideration today for the work which I have already done in past. That is, I have completed my entire task. So this is known as past consideration. When you are giving consideration, and at the same time you are doing work, when you are doing performance, when performance and consideration are moving simultaneously, then that is, they are moving in hand to hand, then that is known as present consideration. Cash sales is the best example of present consideration. Reason behind this is, you go to the shop, you give the money, ultimately at the same time the shopkeeper give you the goods. So this is present consideration. When performance and consideration both are moving simultaneously, both are moving hand to hand together, then this is known as present consideration. When the performance is done in future, but for that you are receiving consideration today only, then that is future consideration. Okay. Now, for example, if I have already received advance payment for teaching you, so here what happens? Now the consideration for the work I am doing, that has already been received by me, but the work will be done slowly and gradually in the near future. So what happens here? Here I am making a future consideration. So if the performance is in future, but for that you are getting consideration today itself in present, then that is known as future consideration. If you will get consideration in future, if you will perform in future, both the things are in future, then that is also future consideration only. Okay, so future consideration can be either you are getting consideration today and performance will be done in future, or you have just done a reciprocal promise, that is, you have done a promise to perform and the other party has done a promise to payment. Nothing has happened today, everything will be in future. That is also future consideration. So consideration can be past, present, or future. You have to give your stress on the performance. If performance is in past, for which you are getting consideration today, or in future, that is past consideration. If performance and consideration are moving hand to hand simultaneously, then this is present consideration. If performance will be in future, consideration will also be in future, it is future consideration. If consideration you are receiving today and for that you will be giving your performance in future, that is also future consideration. So I hope these 3 points are clear to you. So these are the main important rules regarding consideration. Why I have only discussed these 3 points but not the entire topic here. Reason behind this is, I told you that after discussing these points, we'll be discussing the definition of consideration, right? So now from these 3 points only, you will be able to understand the definition of consideration very clearly. So let's discuss the definition of consideration. Before that, if you have any doubts, please ask me here. Okay, section 2, subsection D. It says that when at the desire of the promisor. So it is clear from the first topic we discussed that promise consideration always move at the desire of the promisor. This was the reason why I explained you these 3 points. Okay, so let's start the definition. When at the desire of the promisor, the promisee or any other person. This means what? Consideration will always move at the desire of promisor. That is, it will always be decided by the promisor. But it may come from promisee or any other person. That is from promisee or from promisee's behalf. It could be from any other person also. Has done or abstained from doing something, or does one abstains from doing something, or promises to do or abstain from doing something. Now, what does these 3 lines means? These 3 lines means, in short, these means that consideration can be passed. That is, if you promise to do something that you have already done in past, or you are doing it today, or you are doing in future. That means what? Consideration can be past, present, or future. These 3 lines clearly states that your consideration can either be past or present or future. Something such act or abstinence or promise is called a consideration for the promise. So if you have understood these 3 points, these 3 characteristics of consideration, then the definition of consideration becomes very easy. It seems large, it seems lengthy, but if you have understood these 3 points, then the definition is very clear, because the definition is combination of these 3 points that we have already discussed. So now we'll discuss point number 4, because the 3 legal rules we have already discussed. Okay, point number 4 also we have discussed, that is, it may be past, present, or future. Next is consideration may be of some value, but it will not need to be adequate. Now, whenever you are entering into any sort of contract, you must make sure that there is a consideration in that contract. If there is no consideration, then the contract is not valid. Contract will never be valid. But consideration is necessary, but it is adequate or not, it is not necessary. The value of the house is rupees 1 crore. The value of the house is rupees 1 crore. But if I with my free just does not matter that you have taken the exact value. All that matters is there must be considered in the contract. If it is of full value, it is fine. If it is of half value, if it is also for rupees 1, then also it is valid. Then also it is valid. Am I audible and visible now? Is everything okay? Is it all clear now? Okay, I think there are network issues. Okay, so we were discussing that consideration must be of some value, but it need not be adequate. That is, if you are receiving something from the other party, it is not necessary that is of exact value of that thing. Now, for example, if I'm selling this house and the value of this house is rupees 1 crore, but I'm selling the same house for rupees 50 lakhs, it is my wish. I'm selling it by my consent. Nobody has forced me to sell that house for such a lower value, but I'm selling it at my own consent, at my free will. So here we cannot say that the contract is not valid because consideration is not adequate. That is, it is not actually equal to the worth of the product. No, it is not valid here. The consideration is necessary in a contract. You must have some consideration, but the value of consideration is not decided here. It could be of any value. If it is even for rupees 1, then also it is valid. But there a question arises that the consent is free or not. If the party proves that I have done all this with my free consent, I have willingly transferred this house for rupees 50 lakh for a lower value, then it will be fine. Then it will be a valid consideration. So whenever you are making a contract, just make sure that there is some consideration. The adequacy of the consideration, that is, it is of the same worth, it is of the equal worth, that is not necessary. That is not at all necessary. There must be consideration, but adequacy of a consideration is not required. Next is consideration must be legal. Whenever you are giving consideration, I think I'm having some network issues right now. Just make sure whenever you are not able to hear me or whenever my video visuals are not clear, then just uh, give a comment in question and answer section so that I come to know that whatever I'm speaking is coming to you or not. Okay. So interrupt me there and then if my network, if you're not able to connect with me. Okay, so we were discussing consideration must be for something that is legal. If you are giving consideration for something that is not legal, that is illegal, then your consideration becomes void. What kind of things are considered illegal? If something is forbidden by law. If something is forbidden by law, that is killing somebody. If you are giving advice to the other person to kill somebody and you are charging for that, then that is illegal. So there the consideration is not valid. If it is of such nature, that is, it will defeat any provision of the law. If it is defeating any law, if it is not lawfully correct, then also it will not be a valid consideration. Reason behind that will be it is not considered legal. It will not be considered legal. Like for example, for if we talk about company law, then to appoint an independent director, you need to satisfy some rules regarding those independent director. If you satisfy those rules, then only you'll be allowed to appoint that person as an independent director. Now, if you're not satisfying those rules, you are appointing anybody, then that will not be legal. That will not be valid. If you are if you are entering making other person enter who is your relatives are not allowed to enter as an independent director in a company, so this is illegal. If something is um, avoided in any other law, then also you're not supposed to give consideration for that. If something is fraudulent, if you have obtained the consent of the other person by fraud, that is the other person did not wanted to enter into a contract but you wanted to enter, so you told some lies to that person, then there also the consideration is not legal. Next is it implies injuries to the person or property of another. If the consideration you are giving is for damaging somebody's property, like for example, if I appointed a person and I told him to completely destroy Mr. XYZ's house. So here I'm doing a contract. I'm giving consideration for something that will cause injury to the other person, that will cause some loss to the other person. So there also the consideration does not becomes valid. Next is the court regards it as immoral or opposed to public policy. Now, remember one thing. If you are giving consideration for something which is immoral or which is opposed by the public policy, then there also your consideration is not valid. Your consideration is not legal. Now, what is immoral and what is opposed by public policy? First, we'll discuss immoral. Immoral means something which is against morality, something which is not correct, something which is against morality. Now, what happens? For example, I'm having this house. The upper part of this house, I gave it to somebody on rent. Now, what happens? I gave the tenant here was a terrorist. He took this house because he wanted to make some bomb or something like that, because he wanted to destroy something, so he wanted a place to create a bomb. So if I check on the morality ground, this is not correct. No matter he might be giving me lots of money, lots of consideration, but yet this contract will not be valid because the consideration I'm receiving is against the humanity, so if you are giving or getting consideration like this, which is immoral in nature, which your moral, if I talk on a moral ground, my morals will not allow me to enter into such kind of contract. So if it is not correct morally, then the consideration is not valid. And secondly, if you are giving consideration which is opposed to public policy, like for example, if we talk about IAS, then what happens? The IAS is selected under different procedures. First of all, they have to give 2 exams, then an interview, then they'll able to get the job. So for example, if there are 2 persons, Mr. A and Mr. B, Mr. A and Mr. B both have cracked IAS pre's and IAS mains. Both have cracked. Mr. A has obtained higher marks than Mr. B. For example, if the paper of was out of 100, Mr. A scored 90 and Mr. B scored 85. So technically on the marital basis, if we see that on a merit basis, Mr. A is more deserving than Mr. B. But what happens when there was interview? Mr. A gave his 100% and gave the interview. But Mr. B anyhow knew that he is lacking behind Mr. A. So what did he do? He gave rupees 2 crore as a bribe to the committee that was taking the interview, and he got selected. Now this rupees 2 crore that he has given as a bribe is not morally correct, is not correct. It is opposed by public policy. That is, the public policy says that choose a person who is of highest merit, who has given his 100% and who is most suitable for this job. Don't choose a person under your own personal benefits. So what happens here? The committee has taken rupees 2 crore and appointed Mr. B as IAS and rejected Mr. A. But technically, if we see, Mr. A was more deserving than Mr. B. So here, the consideration this committee took was for something that is opposed to public policy. So if you are getting consideration for any of these works that we have already discussed, then your contract will not be valid. Although it has consideration, but the consideration you are receiving is not correct, is not legal. So make sure that whenever you are getting something in return, that should always be legal. That should not be opposed to any public policy, or that should not be illegal, or that should not be immoral, anything. If you're getting consideration for such things, then your consideration is not valid. Next is, consideration must not be something which a person is already bound to do. Now, if you are already bound to do something and you are taking consideration for that, then it is not valid consideration. Now, for example, I'm here to teach you. I'm here to teach you. I am bound to teach you. Now, if I'm telling you that you give me something, you give me some monetary benefits, then only I'll be teaching you. Here, the consideration I'm receiving from you is not correct, because I am already bound to do this work, right? The institute has already appointed me to teach you. Now, no matter you have paid something or you have not paid something, I am here to teach you. I am not supposed to take a single penny from you, right? So here, the contract is not valid. The contract is not valid. Why? Because the consideration I am taking is for that work that I'm already supposed to do, that I'm already bound to do. I'm already under a contract to do this work, but yet I'm taking more from you, then that will not be a valid consideration. So make sure whenever you are making a consideration, it should not be for that work that you are already bound to do. Okay. So these are certain rules regarding consideration. Next topic is no consideration, no contract. This topic will be starting on Monday, because I do not want to break the flow here, because I want each and every point will be has to be complete today. But today the time is not enough that we'll complete this entire topic. So we'll start this topic on Monday. Till here, we came to know that what a consideration is and what are the legal rules regarding consideration. I hope everything is clear and there is no doubt. If you have any doubt, I'm here for 5 minutes. You can ask me here. And the question paper regarding past year questions, I will search for it. I will ask the institute for it. If they have any link, I'll share it here. Okay. And if I have any questions, past year questions, then I'll share you here itself, or likewise I'll do that. Okay, so don't worry about past year questions, that will be shared here itself. Apart from that, if you guys have any doubt, you can ask me, or if you don't have any doubt, then you may leave this class. Okay, thank you everyone. I'm here only for 5 minutes till 6:30. If you have any doubts, please ask me here itself. Regarding this topic or regarding past topics, any topic you have doubt, you can ask me.